After. When you reach the peak of the mountain, it's time to go home. This evening, we are going to explore a very common and frustrating component in many people's lives. Something that bothers people internally, namely our powerful inconsistencies. This is relevant, I think, to most people, especially to people who are struggling with particular addictions or habits or appetites, and they think that they have triumphed over them, only to discover a day or week or month later how powerful their inconsistencies. They tell the anecdote about three enlightened, modern, sophisticated rabbis who were discussing their respective temples on Yom Kippur. The first rabbi says, our synagogue is so progressive and open-minded and modern. We really don't believe in people fasting and not drinking for 24 hours. And therefore, every member of the synagogue, as he or she enters the temple, Yom Kippur in the morning, we give them a lovely sandwich with some sushi, so that when they get hungry in the middle of the day, they can enjoy the delicious food. The other rabbi says, that's not a big deal. Let me tell you about our temple. Near every seat, we have a built-in laptop with wireless internet. That way you get bored in the middle of the services. The rabbi's sermon is too monotonous. So you open your laptop, you use your browser, you check your email, you surf the web, and you educate yourself, or you do some other exciting things. The third rabbi says, it's not a big deal. Let me tell you about our temple. He says it comes this time of the year, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the high holidays. We put up a big sign on the front door of the temple, closed for the holidays. I would say that the portion in the Torah which is the most paradoxical as far as its structure is concerned is the portion of Acharei Mos. The composition of this portion, its structure, is extremely paradoxical, enigmatic, and puzzling. It is hard to find a portion which contains within its two halves two themes that are more diametrically opposed than the themes articulated in the portion of Acharei. Acharei Mos is divided into two sections. It's the 16th and 17th and 18th chapter of Leviticus, of Vayikra. 16 and 17 deals with one theme, and the final chapter of the portion deals with another theme. The first half of Acharei deals with the most spiritual and holiest day in the Jewish calendar, Yom Kippur, and its magical ingredient for renewal. This was the rare moment, occurring once a year, when the holiest man of Israel, the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, represented by Aaron and his generation, would enter the holiest place on earth, the chamber in the temple known as the Holy of Holies, where he would perform special services. It was a day designated, as it still is, to bring atonement, cleansing, healing to the Jewish people, and by extension to the entire world. This is the first section of Acharei Mos, dealing extensively in great detail with all of the components of the holiest day of the year, Yom Kippur, and its extraordinary sacred services, different than the services in the sanctuary and in the temple throughout the year. After that, the Torah presents another few laws concerning sacrifices, but then we discover a sharp transition as the Torah begins to caution us against vulgar expressions of intimacy. You can open up your curriculums, look at source number 1. Bring up source number 1, chapter 18 of Leviticus, Acharei Mos. God tells Moses, tell the Jews, K'maisei Eretz Mitzrayim, asher yeshaftem ba lo yisas. Make sure not to do the deeds that were performed in Egypt where you lived. And make sure that the deeds, the behavior that they do in the land of Canaan where I'm going to bring you, do not mimic. and do not follow their laws. And he begins to explain what he means. Make sure you do not have intimate relations with your father. Make sure you do not have intimate relations with your mother. He continues, not with the wife of your father, not with the wife of your friend. Don't burn your children in the pagan idolatry of Molech. And so he continues to discuss various forms of intimate physical relationships that are forbidden: one's father, mother, siblings, uncles, aunts, close relatives, other married women, and so forth. And finally he concludes, do not lie with another man. Do not have intimate relations with an animal. And a woman should not have intimate relationships with an animal. Don't become contaminated and tarnished with all of these types of behaviors. Because these were the behaviors that caused all the nations to become morally defiled and corrupt. And therefore, make sure you're not defiled by these acts. And as he continues, he says, then the land will not vomit you out when you defile it as it vomited out the nations who were there before you. How are we to understand this biblical juxtaposition between these two opposite extremes? Both components are equally significant in the Hebrew Bible and the Torah. There are the laws of Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year. There are the laws that govern intimacy, physical relationships, loyalty in marriage, adultery, and so forth. But how do we understand the juxtaposition? In the very same portion, we have the highest of the high and the lowest of the low. Now this question plays itself out rather in even a more dramatic way on the holy day of Yom Kippur itself. According to Jewish law and in every synagogue across the world, on the morning of this awe-inspiring day, we read the Torah during Shacharis. What section of the Torah do we read on Yom Kippur? Naturally, the section of Acharei Mos, the section dealing with the sanctity of the day and its special services. But now, come back Yom Kippur to Mincha, to afternoon service. The holiest day is drawing to a close. We're soon going to reach the peak moments of Ne'ilah, the final and fifth prayer of Yom Kippur, that greatest moment of intimacy between every Jew and God, when the Jewish people declare Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, Baruch Shem Kvoid Malchus Olam Vad, and Hashem Hu Elokim 7 times, with the blow of the shofar and the declaration of Lashana Abba Yerushalayim next year in Jerusalem. And before these moments, at the Mincha afternoon service, we again read the Torah. Which portion would you expect us to read now at the late afternoon of Yom Kippur? We read the second part of Acharei Mos, dealing with the above-mentioned laws of intimate profanity, of the physical relationships that the Torah considers abominable, disgraceful, and dysfunctional for a human life. The question is a powerful one, and let us reflect on this for a moment together. You are standing in shul, in the synagogue, during the holiest day of the year. It's not the beginning of Yom Kippur. It's already the Mincha service, as I said, right before Ne'ilah. You're enveloped in white. You're wearing a kittel white garments. You haven't enjoyed a morsel of bread or a cold drink for close to 24 hours. This is the day when the Torah compares every single Jew to an angel. The one day a year when we attempt to transcend our bodies and to become for 24 hours all soul. Yom Kippur is an island in time, an oasis of transcendence. Even the person who all year may seem apathetic and indifferent and alien from God and from Jewishness, on Yom Kippur we know a spark is triggered. A core, quintessential dimension of the self is aroused. From Kol Nidre to Ne'ilah, the inherent relationship between the Jew and God emerges in its most powerful strength and splendor. And as the day progresses, it becomes yet more intense and more intense until it reaches its crescendo, its climax. At that moment of Ne'ilah, when the Hasidic masters interpreted Ne'ilah not just as the time when the gates of heaven are about to close, and therefore you must beseech God before it's too late, but on a deeper level, Ne'ilah is the time when the gates of heaven are closed, with you inside, alone with God. Right before these moments, what must your ears pay heed to during these most morally and spiritually charged moments of the year? Not to cheat on your wife, not to violate your mother sexually, not to marry your cow, not to go to sleep with your sister, with your brother, with your uncles, with your aunts. Did the sages believe that this was on our minds on Yom Kippur, standing and meditating and connecting in shul? Here is one day you're finally saying we're like angels, which is why we wear white. We don't eat, we don't drink. There's the famous tradition of saying loud, Baruch Shem, Kvoid Malchusa L'Olam Vad on Yom Kippur. The Jew is like an angel. And at this moment, at Mincha, before Ne'ilah, Gewalt, what are you telling the Jew? He comes to shul, he wants to hear a message. You open the Torah, what are you telling him? Don't mimic the morally depraved and disgraceful behavior of Egypt. And the corrupt lifestyle of absolute sexual perversion, intimate perversion, in this country of Canaan, where children could be burnt for the pagan idols, the Molech, as he continues, where a person can find it human to have relations with an animal. You make sure you don't do it. The message is an important one, but now, at this moment, in order to understand this, let us focus for a moment on another detail. On the holiest day of the year, the priest, the high priest, would perform the services. As I said, he would go into the Holy of Holies and do many different things. Bring up source number 2. I want to quote the Rambam, Maimonides, Hilchos Avodas Yom Kippurim, Perek Dalet, the conclusion of the 4th chapter, which is the conclusion of the laws of the service of Yom Kippur. The Rambam here says, this is the end of the day. The high priest, the Kohen Gadol, sanctifies. He washes his hands and his feet. He removes the garments of gold, the priestly garments. He puts on his own regular clothes. And he goes out of the temple to go home. And the entire nation escorts him till his home. And the Kohen Gadol would make a holiday. He would celebrate, he would make a feast for the fact that he went out in peace. He came out in peace, b'shalom, from the Holy of Holies. The Rambam, of course, quotes this from the Mishnah in Masechta Yuma, the tractate dedicated to Yom Kippur, with a few changes. I want to understand 2 things tonight. We know every single word, every single stanza in Mishnah, in Rambam, dealing with Jewish law. Since Yom Kippur is over, so the phone rings. That's what happens as Yom Kippur ends. So back to regular life. So this is just an illustration of the reality. Every word is meticulous. Every stanza is precise and has meaning. The Rambam tells us the Kohen Gadol finishes his services, he puts on his own clothes, and he leaves to his house. Why is this relevant? Why is this part of Avodas Yom HaKippurim? I mean, I assume when he finished the day, it was a hard, intense day. So now it's nightfall. He leaves the temple. So where should he go? I would assume on my own. He went home. I mean, if you were the high priest, where would you go on the night of after Yom Kippur? Well, he went bowling. He went for pizza. He went for a basketball camp. Where would you go if you were the Kohen Gadol? He went for a drink. Obviously, he would go home. I mean, how many more things are there to do at the night after Yom Kippur? Why does the Mishnah and the Rambam find it necessary to mention this obvious point? I know he went home. Why is it necessary to mention V'yoytze lebeisa? If they wouldn't mention it, what would we think? Where did he go? Obviously, he went home. Where else did it go? Besides, another question. The Rambam, it's well known. One of the most fascinating things about the book of the Rambam, the Mishnah Torah, is everything is part of law, halacha. It's not a book of stories. It's not a book of history. It's not a book that records behavior. It's a book that defines, as the Rambam writes in his introduction, Sefer Halachos. Halacha is a book of laws. In other words, every description is a law. What is the law here? The laws are finished. Yom Kippur is over. He finished the service. Now you're on your own. Is there a halacha v'yoytze lebeisa? He goes home. He did it. There's nowhere else to go. But is this part of a halacha? What's the law? And yet this is how the Rambam concludes Hilchos Avodas Yom Kippurim, the laws of Yom Kippur. In order to understand all of this and answer all of these questions, let's preface, of course, as in the good old Jewish custom, yet another question. It's well known that in Judaism, the name of something or somebody is extremely significant. The Talmud tells us about the great sage Rabbi Meir, who used to derive from a person's name a lot of meaning relevant to this person. The Kabbalah, the Hasidic masters teach that the name of something, the letters of the name, are the actual channels through which its spiritual energy is communicated to this person or to this object. The name that parents give a child when he or she is born, according to the Arizal, is considered a form of prophecy. So the name is not just incidental, everything needs a name. But in the Jewish perspective, the name of something actually encapsulates its core, its soul, its inner design, its essence. This is also true concerning the names of the portions. The names of the parshas of Torah are not just names that are, coincidental. Every portion needs a name, so you choose a word in the beginning of the portion and you give it the name. But if you study the names well, you will see they didn't always choose the first available word, because the name is more than just a sign by which we identify the portion. The name actually embodies and encapsulates the deeper theme of the portion. If you want to understand the essence of this week's portion of Acharei Mos, and therefore understand how such two diametrically opposed themes, Yom Kippur, the holiest day, and the lowest forms of moral, intimate behavior, how they come together in one portion. What is the logic? What is the rationale to bring them together under the roof of one portion of one structure, and to read them both on the holiest day? The above mentioned questions. Go to the name. Study the name well, because the name will capture the theme, the soul, the essence of the portion. So from the name you'll be able to understand every component and every verse which is part of that name, every verse in the portion of Acharei. And yet in this case it seems that the name is, number one, not very significant. It doesn't even have a message. Certainly it has no relevance to the themes discussed in the portion. The name is Acharei. What does Acharei mean? Acharei means after. And that is because the opening verses, God spoke to Moses, Acharei Mos shnei bnei Aaron bekarvasim lufnei Hashem vayamusu. After the death of the two sons of Aaron, when they came close to God and they died. These are, of course, the two sons of Aaron, Nadav and Avihu, who died on the day that the tabernacle was dedicated, as the Torah discusses in Shmini. So what happens is, after the death of the two children of Aaron, God speaks to Moses, and what does he warn Aaron? He warns Aaron not to always go in to the Holy of Holies, only at particular moments and in a particular way. And that's when he discusses Yom Kippur, the day that Aaron and every high priest was entitled and summoned to enter into the Holy of Holies, provided that he performed the special services and sacrifices and offerings designated for the holy day of Yom Kippur. So what does the word actually, Acharei, mean? The word Acharei means after. Or if you want the full word, Acharei Mos, after the death. What is the meaning? What is the significance of the word after? Okay, after. After what? After the death. Okay. How does that in any way convey, personify, and encapsulate the message, the theme that's discussed in Acharei Mos? It doesn't seem to reflect in any way the content of this portion. In order to understand this, I want to raise one more question. We can raise a lot more questions, but let's raise one more question. Anybody who studied the services of Yom Kippur and the prayers of Yom Kippur knows there's a special moment there. And I remember as children in shul, Yom Kippur could be a little long. And especially if you're sitting in one place for a long time. Even today it can be a little long. But so there's always, these highlights or these especially entertaining or memorable moments that remain ingrained in one's mind, one's heart from childhood. The Torah in Acharei Mos describes the moment when the high priest had to go into the Holy of Holies, the only time of the year, and would sprinkle the blood of some of the sacrifices, the animals that were sacrificed on this holy day. There was a bull, there was a goat, and their blood, unlike any other day of the year, was brought into this Kodesh HaKadoshim and sprinkled right there in the Holy of Holies. Where? Lifnei HaKaporos, right in front of the Holy Ark, where the two tablets were contained, and over it there was the Kaporos, the lid, the golden lid covering the ark from where you had the cherubs, the keruvim. Or later, at the end of the first temple and the second temple, there was no ark anymore, but they had an Evan Shasiya, a stone, a rock. And over there, the Kohen Gadol would sprinkle the blood. And he had to sprinkle it, as the Mishnah says, and if you open up your curriculum, take a look at the source number 4 in your curriculum. Source number 4 in your curriculum. It's on the PDF below the video. We'll soon get to source number 3. Take a look. The Mishnah in Yom Daf and Gimel Amud Beis. The Mishnah says that Mishanitel Aron Evan Hoisa Shem Emayis Neviim Arishonim. There was a stone when they didn't have the Aron anymore. It was called Shasiya. It was 3 fingers above the earth. And on the stone, the high priest would place the container of blood. Nichnas l'makom shenichnas v'amad b'makom she'amad. The high priest would go into the Holy of Holies. He would stand between the 2 staves of the ark or in front of the stone. V'hiza mimenu, and he would sprinkle from this blood achas l'mayla v'sheva l'mata, 1 above and 7 below. V'lo hayeh miskaven lahazas lo l'mayla v'lo l'mata ela kamatzlef. He would shoot it with his finger. He wouldn't designate it, lo hayeh miskaven. He wouldn't take the blood and place it in a particular place, higher or lower. But kamatzlef, he would throw the blood. But 1 was higher, l'mayla, and 7 were below, near their girth. V'kach hayeh moina, and here he would count. And for this, in many shuls and many communities, there's a beautiful melody, the beautiful song, in which this count of the Kohen Gadol, while he's sprinkling the blood in the Holy of Holies, is recounted every single year during the Seder Avodah, as we recount the services of the high priest on Yom Kippur, after Musaf, on Yom Kippur in the afternoon or late morning. So we repeat this count. Achas, 1. The first time we would sprinkle the blood, On a higher level, a maila higher, he would say 1. Then achas v'yachas, 1 and 1, achas ushtayim, 1 and 2, achas v'shalosh, achas v'yarba, achas v'chamesh, achas v'sheish, achas v'sheva. 1. And then he would begin sprinkling the blood below. So he would go 1 and 1, 1 and 2, 1 and 3, 1 and 4, 1 and 5, 1 and 6, 1 and 7. And this was the end of it. And then he would do the same thing near the paroiches, which means facing the partition, the curtain between the Holy of Holies in the temple and the Holy. Again, he would sprinkle the blood, achas lamayla, 1 above, v'sheva lamata. And he would recount it again. Achas, achas v'yachas, achas ushtayim, achas v'shalosh, etc. Till achas v'sheva. Now let's understand this. Let's understand this. Why did it have to be so complicated? If he had to count, so he could have done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He sprinkled the blood 8 times. The first one had to be higher level, on a higher plane. The last 7 had to be lower. So he could have done 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's not how he did it. He did 1, and instead of going 2, he would do 1 and 1. 1 and 2. So he always repeated the first count, the first sprinkling of the blood. That was Lamaila. He always recounted until he came to the last of the lower ones. Achaz v'sheva, 1 and 7. Why? So the Gemara asks the question. The Gemara brings 2 reasons. One is Rebbe Lezer, one is Rabbi Yochanan. Rebbe Lezer says he shouldn't make a mistake. We're scared if he just goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, he may confuse, make a mistake, and he won't do the 8th. Because when he says 1 and 2, he may forget and think the 1 and 2 were already on the lower, the second group of sprinkling of the blood, on the lower level. Which is strange. We're not dealing here with 1,000,000 numbers. We're not even dealing here with 15. We're dealing with 8 numbers. It's so difficult for the high priest to remember. Would it really even be so complicated for you? Remember, he trained a long time for these services. Rabbi Yochanan, on the second opinion there in Gemara, you could look in your curriculum, brings it from a verse. It says, "V'lifnei kaporis yaza." The word yaza is superfluous. Rabbi Yochanan learns from this, "Limit al-azar rishayna shetzrichim minyanim kolachas v'achas." From this we learn that the first hazah, the first time he sprays the blood, that must be counted with the other counts as well, with the other sprinkles as well, the other spraying as well. So according to him, he has a verse. According to Rebbe Lezer, it's just that he shouldn't make a mistake. And even according to Rabbi Yochanan, what's the logic? Why did the Torah want that he should keep on counting again the first time when he, the high priest, sprayed the blood? And now there's another very interesting thing. In the same Gemara in Yuma, Daf Nun Hey Amud Aleph, again you can look in your curriculum, the Gemara brings an argument between Reb Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. Reb Meir says the count was achas, achas v'yachas, achas v'shtayim, achas v'shalosh, achas v'arba, achas v'chamesh, achas v'sheish, achas v'sheva. 1, 1 and 1, 1 and 2, 1 and 3, 1 and 4, 1 and 5, 1 and 6, 1 and 7. Rabbi Yehuda, the Gemara says, Rabbi Yehuda says, achas, achas v'yachas, shtayim v'yachas, shalosh v'achas, arba v'achas, chamesh v'achas, sheish v'achas, sheva v'achas. The other way around. 1, 1 and 1. But not 1 and 2, 2 and 1. 3 and 1, 4 and 1. And the Gemara right away says, Loi pligi, it's not an argument. Marki Asre, Marki Asre. Everybody did it according to the custom of his location. As Rashi explains, some people do the general number first and the specific number afterwards, and some the other way around. For example, as Rashi means, you could do Esrim or Shtayim, 20 and 2, or Shtayim ve'Esrim, 2 and 20. In Reb Meir's region, the way was, do first 1 and then 2. Achas, achas v'achas. Achas v'shtayim, achas v'shalosh. And in Rabbi Yehuda's region, it was the other way around. But there's no logic, there's no argument in the in the very idea. As the Gemara explains, they both hold the same thing. It's just a question which number came first. And yet we know that every argument in Torah has a lot of profound meaning to it. It was just simply a technical argument based on the place where they lived. On one level, yes. But there are so many layers in Torah. It's certainly that this argument also reflects a deeper perspective, two perspectives of interpretation. So this is what we want to understand now. What was the logic of having the Kohen Gadol repeating achas, achas v'achas, achas v'shtayim? What's wrong with doing achas and then shtayim and shalish? No, he had to keep on going back to the first achas. Let's get now to the explanations. Really, all of this, all of these questions, all of these issues are all enlightened and explained with the word Acharei. As I said, the name of the portion captures the soul of the portion, the essence of the portion. There is not a single verse in any portion which you will discover its full depth of meaning if you do not reach in to its name. In other words, the name is your reference point through which you can capture the true message of the verse. So if you want to really understand Yom Kippur, and you want to understand the Torah's perspective on Yom Kippur, and you want to understand the instructions of Torah in Yom Kippur, including the issues we discussed, the juxtaposition, the reading of Mincha, the Kohen Gadol going home, one on top, achas lamayla v'sheva lamata, one on top, seven below. It's all there in the word Acharei After. And here we discover one of the most important, critical, realistic, pragmatic, and also inspiring approaches of Judaism to the human life. And the message is articulated in one single word: Acharei, afterwards. Or Acharei Mos, after the death. After. The moment after is the key. You may be flying high in heaven. You may be inspired, invigorated, uplifted, rejuvenated, ecstatic, enthralled, overwhelmed. Your heart may be melting away in celestial passion. Your soul may be ablaze with sacred fire. Your heart may be swelling with joy, optimism, hope, love, kindness, holiness. Yet you must remember right now, at this moment, Acharei, the moment that might come after this moment. You must remember right now that in an hour, in a day, in a week, in a month, or in a year, if you're lucky, the circumstances may change and may change drastically. The psyche may change, the mood may change, the conditions may change, the perceptions may change, the realities around you or in you may be metamorphosized, and you may find yourself in a very different place. And not only in a very different place, but perhaps in a place which today you would not even recognize or entertain the idea that you may be there. You may find yourself even in a spiritual muck and may be tempted towards mundane or even vulgar or even disgusting temptations and inclinations. So at this critical moment when you're having a spiritual high, when you're having moral clarity, when you're experiencing emotional maturity and sobriety, don't make the mistake that so many people make. They become inebriated, intoxicated with this great moment of clarity. And they want to deny to themselves and to the others the Acharei, the moment after. The pasuk says, "Miyala b'har Hashem u'miyakum b'mkayim kachrei." The verse in Tehillim: "Who will ascend the mountain of God, and who will stand in His holy place?" Many people could be Yala b'har Hashem. Everybody could climb a mountain. Everybody could scale to the peak, to the great heights. Miyala b'har Hashem. But miyakum b'mkayim kachrei. Who can maintain their stand in the holy place? Everybody I know goes on a diet. Everybody went on a diet. Who doesn't? Miyakum b'mkayim kachrei. But maintenance. Everybody decides at one point, I'm going to change my lifestyle. I'm going to live a healthy life. I'm going to live a good life. Great. Miyakum b'mkayim kachrei. That's a very different story. And often in the moments of the great high, you're spiritually so uplifted, you forget the Acharei. Comes the Torah and says, this is the moment when you have to focus on the day after, the month after, the week after. Make sure you stock up now on the resolve and the commitment to maintain and retain your integrity during difficult, challenging, and lowly moments that may lay ahead. Now, we'll understand why the Torah juxtaposes in the same portion the holiest experience of the year, Yom Kippur, and some of the most vulgar, unhealthy, immoral, intimate alternatives. By juxtaposing splendid holiness with immoral behavior, the Torah is teaching us this lesson of Acharei. No matter how sublime you may feel at any particular moment in your life, remember the moment afterwards. And remember that the moment afterwards may take you to a place where you will not recognize yourself from the moment before. And suddenly you find yourself gravitating to Ma'aseh Eretz Mitzrayim, to the lifestyle of Egypt. Suddenly you find yourself pulled to Ma'aseh Eretz Canaan, to the lifestyle of the land of Canaan. Don't think that what you have now will for sure last you forever. The tremendous holiness of Yom Kippur, therefore, can only be real if it affects the Acharei. And this is what the Torah really is saying. I don't care about Yom Kippur if there's no Acharei in Yom Kippur. If Yom Kippur is not going to give me guidance, direction, clarity, and the tools to deal with Acharei, Yom Kippur will be another spiritual high, but fad, which can fade away into oblivion, leaving you in the abyss. If Yom Kippur does not give you something which you can take Acharei to the days and months that will follow, when you may be overtaken with abominable urges and cravings, then it's not the Yom Kippur that Judaism is trying to cultivate. On the other hand, it teaches us also something else. It teaches us what Yom Kippur is. Yom Kippur, holiness, is not reserved for those extraordinary individuals who manage to transform their emotions into heaven's mirror. Sometimes people think, what do I have with Yom Kippur? What do I have with holiness? I know myself. I belong to the second part of Acharei Mos, not to the first part. You see, there's two types of people. Some people believe they're Yom Kippur people. They belong to the first section of Acharei. They're holy. And they have to know Acharei, they may reach another place and be prepared for it. Some people are exactly the other way. They say, I belong to the second part of Acharei. I'm the Egypt guy. I'm the Canaan guy. What do I have with Yom Kippur? Comes the Torah and says they're both in the same portion. They're both part of the same human being. They're both part of the same life. Don't get discouraged. Don't let that deplete your energy. Don't let it drain your idealism. The same person could be in the Holy of Holies. And it's Yom Kippur, and it's genuine, and it's real, and God says it's the holiest day of the year. And then it's the same person, he says, there's a cow, and there's an animal, And I know you're capable of it. Don't do. As Judaism sees it, the very same human being who is capable in engaging in repulsiveness and must be warned against it, he can discover the light of God contained in the depth of his consciousness. She too can enter into the Holy of Holies. Now we'll understand the power of what the rabbis, what the Mishnah says about how the high priest had to go into the Holy of Holies and sprinkle the blood representing the life force of a person, the life force of an animal, the passion, the warmth of a person, the heat of a person represented by blood. Ki adamu ha-nefesh, blood is the soul. And interestingly, in Acharei, in the middle, between the two sections, we have the prohibition about eating blood. There's two dimensions. There's achas and there's sheva. There's 1 and there's 7. 7 represents the structure of life. God created the world in 7 days. Every week has 7 days. Sunday through Shabbos, Sunday through Saturday. And it's a fascinating thing that throughout history, most cultures and civilizations and countries always kept a week of 7 days. Why 7? Why shouldn't a week be 10 days? Doesn't it make sense, a round number? Why shouldn't a week be 5 days, 6 days, 8 days? There were a few attempts in history to change it. A few, very few, and it didn't last. And there is, I think, a calendar or two which has different weeks. But the predominant civilizations and cultures from the beginning of human life on earth keep the week of 7 days. Nothing happens after 7 days. Rabbi Yehuda Halevi in his Kuzari, 12th century, the great Spanish philosopher and poet and Jewish leader, Rabbi Judah Halevi, in his classic Kuzari, discusses this point. And he says it's because ingrained in culture from the beginning of time is creation, the structure of creation in 7 days from Adam and Eve and their descendants, and that's why there's a 7-day week. So 7 represents the structure of existence. That's the structure in which we navigate, in which we live. We plan our weeks, Sunday through Shabbat, through Shabbos. And then it resumes again. 7 is the structure of life. Then there's achas. Achas is oneness. Oneness. This represents the oneness of existence, the core, the organic unity of beyond all of the diversity. It represents the essential unity behind the diversification of the human psyche and the diversification of the world. How does the Song of Songs say? Achas hi yoinosi. My dove is one, singular. In the month of Elul and Tishrei, there's a special verse of Psalms recited every day. Tehillim Chav Zayin, Achas sha'alti me'es Hashem. Oisa avake shifti beveis Hashem kol yemei chai. King David says, there's one thing I ask from God. And the Hasidic masters explain, Achas sha'alti means that King David says, I've reached a point in my life where from all of the diversity and all of the fragmentation in my life, I have discovered the Achas sha'alti. All of the aspects of my life have been reduced to the Achas, to oneness, to the real core of what a person is. All the manifestations and the multifaceted layers of life are all part of Achas Sha'alti. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, the time of Elul and Tishrei, the Jew reaches Achas Sha'alti, oneness. Achas Yainosi, God says, the groom says. My dove is singular, my dove is one, unique, we're Achas, one and one. It's a time of oneness. You transcend, every person is split. We have so many different responsibilities and appointments and stress and so many different objectives and deadlines and different things going on in life. But Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, the high holidays, you reach the achas. You reach the core, the essence of it all. The core behind it all. Achas, one. Yom Kippur, we come to that achas. So the high priest sprinkles the blood. Achas l'mayla. One l'mayla. Achas represents our oneness with the higher source of reality, with the one most high, l'mayla. Sheva l'mata. But then there's the 7 which alamata, which represents the lowly dimension of reality. Comes the Torah and tells us on Yom Kippur in the Holy of Holies, what you want to make sure is not just melt away into the achas and make believe the oneness will always stay there, but take the achas and imbue it into the sheva. Take the one and bring it back into the seven, in the Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Shabbos structure of life. And that's why the count is in this way. Achas. That's achas. Then there's achas v'yachas. And then there's achas or shtayim. Achas v'shalosh. Achas v'yarba. Each one is taking the achas and bringing it into the acharei, to the moment after, when you're going to go into 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 until achas v'sheva. It's to combine the 1 and the 7, the 1 and the 6. And if you don't do that, then the 2 can remain split. And either you'll fall from the 1 and you'll hit the reality of 7 and you won't know it, so the comes to the geist, you'll lose it completely. Or on the other hand, when you're in the world of 7, you can't recognize that you're connected to the world of achas. On Yom Kippur, you must have the acharei. Now here's the difference between Reb Meir and Reb Yehuda, I thought you could say. It's discussed in other sources among the Hasidic masters. Reb Meir comes from the word ur, light, Meir. Rabbi Yehuda comes from the word haidah, submission, surrender, 2 states of consciousness. According to Reb Meir, you begin with the 1 and then you go to the multiple numbers. 1 and 2, 1 and 3, 1 and 4, 1 and 5, 1 and 6. According to Rabbi Yehuda, you begin with the multiple and then you go to the singular. 2 and 1, 3 and 1, 4 and 1. It's how you begin in the terminology of the masters, milmaila lamato, milmata lamaila. From higher to lower or from lower to higher. Reb Meir, the world of light, always holds on to the oneness and takes the oneness and imbues its inspiration into the diversity, into multiplicity. 1 and 2, 1 and 3, 1 and 4. Rabbi Yehuda comes from a different state of consciousness. A person who's not feeling the light, a person who feels the diversity, the fragmentation, the being scattered all over the place with various different appetites. And from the 2 and from the 3 and from the 4, he struggles or she yearns and rises to the achas sha'alti, to the achas yenasi, to the 1. And this is why the name is Acharei. And it's connected to Acharei Mos too. After the death. What is the meaning of after the death? B'karvosim lefnei Hashem vayamusu. Nadav and Avihu didn't die as gangsters, as criminals. Yes, what they did was a sin, but as they say, there are ugly sins and there are holy sins. And their sins were holy. They came close to God. They came too close and they expired. The great biblical commentator at the beginning of Acharei Mos, describes and explains that the Torah is trying to tell us here, God was telling Moses, they died because they came close, because they wanted to kiss God. Those are the words he uses. They wanted to embrace God. And they did not stop themselves from experiencing intimacy with God to the point that they actually expired. Their physical containers could not contain the light. So the death of Nadav and Avihu represented the ultimate in holiness. And this is what the Torah is telling us. What is the name of this portion? Acharei Mos. There is a time when a Jew reaches that ultimate unity, that ultimate intimacy, this cosmic oneness. And that's the time you have to remember Acharei Mos. But there's a moment that comes afterwards. And it's that moment you must recall at this very instant, at this very experience. You must recall the moment Acharei. You get frustrated with your inconsistencies. Acharei Mos confers dignity on our inconsistencies. It tells us that who is the human being? Sulam mutzav artzav Roshim Magia Shamayim, Jacob's dream. The ladder is etched on the earth, but its peak reaches heaven. Which means even when we're in heaven, we have to remember that a part of us is on earth. But even when we're in earth, we have to remember that a part of us is Magiya Shamayim and reaches heaven. Now we'll understand why the Mishnah and the Rambam tell us that at the end of Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol didn't just conclude the service and that's it. But they make a point to emphasize, V'yotzei lebeisoi. He goes back home. This is not an incidental detail. Okay, he's finished everything. He goes back home. It's part of Hilchos Avodas Yom Kippurim. Part of the laws of Yom Kippur. Just like there's a law on Yom Kippur, you have to go in and burn incense in the Holy of Holies. And you have to send a goat to Azazel. And you have to sprinkle the blood near the ark, etc., etc. There is another law on Yom Kippur. And what's the law of Yom Kippur? And actually the law culminating Yom Kippur, v'yotzei lebeisoi. It's not. Okay, he went home, obviously. It's part of the halachas. He has to go home. Why? Open up source number 3. How does the Rambam begin the laws of Yom Kippur? How does he begin? Look at what's going on here. There's 4 chapters in Rambam for the laws of the Yom Kippur, of the service of Yom Kippur. Chapter 1, 2, 3, and 4. How does he begin? Source number 3, Zok the Rambam, Perek Aleph Halacha Gimel. Shivas Yomim Koidem Liyom Kippurim Mafrishin Kohen Gadol Mibeisei Lilishkasei Shebamikdash. 7 days before Yom Kippur, they took the high priest away from his home. They separated him from his home to his chamber in the holy temple. V'davar zeh Kabbalah Moshe Rabbeinu. This is a tradition back to Moses. During these 7 days, he cannot have relations, cannot be together with his wife physically. And the Rambam explains why, and it's taken from the first opening Mishnah of Tractate Yuma, 7 days before Yom Kippur. The high priest leaves his home. Why? Because holiness is transcendence. Holiness is withdrawal. Holiness is disengagement from the physical. Removing yourself from the mundane, departing from the familiar, from the everyday, from the concrete, from the dense, from the materialistic. You leave home for 7 days to get into the mode, the zone, the field energy of Yom Kippur. That's the beginning of Yom Kippur. Comes the Rambam and now finishes the whole Yom Kippur. How do you know Yom Kippur was finished? Yom Kippur was complete. Yom Kippur was real. When did you hit the jackpot and hit the home run on Yom Kippur? Zok the Rambam, as we said in source number 2, v'yotzei lebeisoi. He has to go home. There are people that Yom Kippur, they are the holiest people in the world. They are in the Holy of Holies. But then they don't know how to go back home. Either they don't go home because they can't deal with home. They like the synagogue. They like the club. They like the group. They like the atmosphere. They can't deal with the reality of home. And if they do go home, the person in the house and the person in shul is a different person. At home, they're pugnacious. They're obnoxious. They're sometimes selfish. They're angry. They're in a bad mood. They denigrate. They insult. Comes the Torah and says, Al's gut and shein, you could be in the Holy of Holies, Yom Kippur. But if at the end of Yom Kippur there's no yotzei lebeisoi, if you don't know how to take it all into your house, into your kitchen and dining room and bedroom and living room, if you don't take it back home to your wife, to your spouse, to your husband, to your tayere kinderlach, to your children, if the home with all of the stresses and responsibilities of the home does not get permeated with the moral majesty and the dignity you experienced on Yom Kippur, it is nicht Yom Kippur, it's not Yom Kippur. It was a trip, but it wasn't Yom Kippur, because a Jewish Yom Kippur is Acharei. You're missing the Acharei. You may have had the Achas Lamaila, but you didn't have the Sheva Lamata. You didn't bring the Achas into the Sheva. Holiness is not an end in and of itself. Holiness has an aim in Judaism, to return to the very arena you escaped and remake it in its image, to sanctify the material, to elevate the mundane, to sublimate the everyday. And if you don't know how to go home, if there's no Yotzei Lebeisei, there was something missing in the Yom Kippur. You had the Achas L'mayla, but you didn't have the Sheva Lamata. So part of the laws of Yom Kippur is, you got to take it home. This is very reflective of a common situation, a common problem. Sometimes people don't appreciate that when is religion real? If it's Yotzei Lebeisei, if it goes home. There are people who are in shul or in Beis Medrash or in yeshiva, close their eyes and melt away in ecstasy in their relationship to God. But when they come home, they don't know how to be loving. They don't know how to be tolerant. They don't know how to be respectful. This means that their spirituality is missing its essential ingredient. You want to know what the essence of Yom Kippur is? It's Acharei. It's the moment after Yom Kippur. It's the moment you come home. It's in the downer where you see what type of upper it was. Was it a trip? Was it a fad? Or was it a holistic, organic, and authentic experience? The difference is if the Kohen Gadol goes home. If he's Yotzei Lebeisei, then you know the Yom Kippur was a true Yom Kippur. Have a wonderful night.
Da da da